Travis Winguzel. So I've finished with the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy marathon. So now I can go back to NCIS where I left off. But before we do that, I will sacrifice my life, my time, talents, energies, everything which the Lord has blessed me, or with which He will bless me, to you. Are there anybody out there who doesn't know where I got that from? Would be curious to know. But if you are new, there's a lot of stuff you're missing out on. There's a lot of information that if you don't have a prerequisite knowledge of from watching my channel, you're going to be lost, you're going to be confused, and because you're confused, you're going to automatically deny, and then you're going to be stupid and make a dumbass hate comment based on your ignorance. So, don't pull a beam and moat. That's the moral of the story. So, the Book of Ether. Prophecy of the Latter Days. So what you look for are patterns, and then you identify anomalies using the key that Joseph Smith gave you to interpret prophecy. So first, you look for the hero of the story. He is the last days Emmanuel. You look for the antagonist. He's the false prophet of the Great and Abominable Church with his false idol god Jesus. See, I told you, if you hadn't been following, you're lost. And so, the people that are held in bondage being rescued by Emmanuel are the Mormons. So here we have, in the beginning of Ether, Moroni is now saying that he has some time, so he's putting in an abridgment of the account of the 24 plates, or were they tablets? Whatever they were. Of what's called the Book of Ether. I think the painting, it's a painting that turned into a digital. He's writing on plates. So, yeah, 24 plates. There it is, verse 2. See, I get inspired to do the videos, and then I go over them, and then whatever I'm inspired to say, I say, and you get offended, and you leave. You never come back. Send a hate comment and a death threat. And so, the 24 plates of ether were found by the people of Limhi. And so, hopefully you hadn't forgotten who they were and how they came into being. In Zarahemla, after King Mosiah had taken the people from Nephi and found Zarahemla. And then you have King Benjamin, and then King Mosiah, and there's some people who recognize that there's an error that King Benjamin is actually Mosiah, or Mosiah was Benjamin, or something like that. But no, there was Mosiah, Benjamin, Mosiah. And so the pattern that you see with that is that you have an Exodus pattern. They're in their headquarters of Salt Lake City. They leave with the king, Emmanuel, Mormons. leave with Emmanuel from Salt Lake City to the Promised Land, which in this case becomes Zarahemla. There's already people inhabiting that land, so they blast them and take over, crossing the Missouri River, parting it, passing through on dry ground. Yeah, it's a different story. That's the anomalies you look for. And so the people of Zarahemla have the same pattern. They came with Mulek, which is king in Hebrew, Emmanuel, from the destroyed Jerusalem by Babylon, came and founded Zarahemla. And they didn't bring any records with them, so they're illiterate. They don't understand parables of Jesus. And so they've completely altered the religion, completely altered the language to adapt to not having any records to teach them. You know, school books, textbooks, reference books. And so Mosiah teaches the people, teaches them Egyptian and Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew, and join one with another, as King Benjamin then does the baptism thing. It's not for Mormons who've been baptized. It's for those who are brought in to Zion, who are righteous too. And so, over time, there's a man called Zenith. He decides to take a few people and head out back to Nephi. And he gets to Nephi, and the Lamanites decide, hey, we'll use them as slaves so that they can provide us with free food and drink and such. And so they were there as slaves. Unfortunately, after Zenith died, his son Noah took over, and he was a wicked, naughty man. Took the Mormons to Salt Lake Valley, having murdered Joseph. And he was extremely wicked, had polygamy. That's one of the 5 naughty no-nos of polygamy in the Book of Mormon. And so, yeah, he hoarded the money of tithing from the Mormons and lived a lavish lifestyle in priestcraft with he and his 12 apostles. And as Matthew says, and as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the latter days. Yeah, that's latter days. That's why we're using modern connections. And Abinadi comes, and Emmanuel comes and says, be good, naughty, naughty. And they refuse to listen to him, and they murder him, burn him with faggots, which are flaming sticks. Not the abusive nickname or slang slur for those who are happy. And so Alma, one of the priests, who apparently only had authority to baptize in the waters of Mormon, he taught them everything that Emmanuel had said before he was murdered by Willard Richards, having shot him in the back and dumped his body out the window, and then forged documents saying it was by Joseph, and forged sealing records saying it was by Joseph, etc., etc. Changed documents to say it was the way it was originally. The Joseph Smith papers now show he was lying and deceiving us. like adding Jesus Christ to the name of Joseph's church. And so the Lamanites, as prophesied by Abinadi, come in and destroy the people. And Limhi is the son of Noah. So he's now the new king, and he's now taking the people destroyed in Salt Lake City back to Zion of Zarahemla. And so King Emmanuel. And they eventually come across Ammon, Emmanuel, who says that Mosiah, Emmanuel, which Moses, Yah is Mosiah, by the way, in case you didn't know. And he says that he has a Urim and Thummim, that he's able to see the signs in the heavens of the latter days and translate Egyptian and Paleo-Hebrew, even though they're supposed to already know Egyptian and Paleo-Hebrew. Because Deseret comes from Egyptian, which is a part of the Jaredites. And so that's the plates that he's able to translate. And then Moroni is giving an abridgment of it for us as he puts it in here. And so yes, it's Joseph Smith Sr., who was the master mason of Canandaigua on 9/11/1826, was now required to finish the book and get it published to warn the United States of America and help establish a group that would be raised up in preparation for the latter days, but the enemy infiltrated the organization, rose up in number, rose up in authority, couped the church in 1838, but was short-lived because Joseph Smith came back. And so they then murdered him and officially couped the church, destroying Joseph Smith's church, having created a new world order. And they fled the country and came to the valley here and established their kingdom of, ta-da, beehives, or honeybees. Deseret, from the Egyptian. Northern Crown. So yeah, it's not a wonder that the Southerners of the Confederates, after losing the Civil War, came to the Southern Kingdom of Deseret. Called it the land of Dixie. And so you see the Exodus pattern that's involved here. And so sure enough, the Jaredites are following this same Exodus pattern. And Ether's genealogy goes all the way back to Jared and the brother of Jared, Mahan Rai Yankimer. And they're the Emmanuel people, the dual brothers. And the brother of Jared apparently is the seer that the brother of Jared has to Jared has to ask the brother of Jared to tell them what to do all the time, compel them in all things. But yeah, their journeys are a result of the Tower of Babel in Beirut, Lebanon, not of Babylon. And Beirut, Lebanon, that's where Babel was. And that's comes from the Egyptian main story of the first death of Osiris, and ties in to when Horus, the son of Osiris, comes back to Egypt to restore the throne of his father from uncle who murdered his brother, whose name is Satan, King Satan in Paleo-Hebrew, King Set. And so in the battle, the way Horus was able to win was by impregnating Set. And Set gave birth to the branch. So if you know anything about the branch and several documents in what's called Old Testament by Christians who culturally appropriated the Bible from the Jews, then you'd be aware of it. But that's where it comes from. And so, yeah, the Tower of Babel, in the Bible account, the people are scattered from that land, and it's used to be a language problem, but it's the same concept. They're just, the author of Genesis is trying to tell a story about how Egyptian and Paleo-Hebrew have gone extinct, and that the latter-day Emmanuel will be the one to decipher them and restore the languages. Which is it Zechariah? Where the prophecy of a new language is the only passage in the Jewish Tanakh that has every single letter of the Hebrew alphabet in that one passage. And so Paleo-Hebrew is believed to be restored by the Jews from that. So yeah, you're looking for somebody who knows Paleo-Hebrew, who deciphered it, and as well as deciphered the learning of the Egyptians in the language of the Egyptians, not the learning of the Jews in the language of the Egyptians, or the Rosetta Stone, which is in the learning of the Greeks in the language of the Egyptians. So you're looking for somebody who actually has deciphered the learning of the Egyptians in the language of the Egyptians. Okay? It's all part of the prophecies. And so, yeah, they make it to the promised land. And so, then the accounts that go after are about the various presidents of the Great and Abominable Church in Salt Lake Valley. And their oppression and dominion over the face of the earth, and Jezebel at the brothel on Regent Street. Does that help, Exmolex? Does that make you feel better? Family and mean. I don't think she watches my channel. Let's see. The Jaredites prepare for their journey to the Promised Land. This would be a choice land as long as the Mormons are righteous. Otherwise, they'll be cut off. It says swept off here, but cut off is the pattern word that Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon and prophecies from the Bible talk about. So yeah, you're not looking for actual barges. None of this is real. It's not literal history. It's prophecy of the latter days. And so the magical, supernatural stuff in the Book of Mormon, yeah, that's your clue that it's not literal history, that it's prophecy. So whether it's the Liahona, the Urim and Thummim, the barges with lights but no air to breathe, yeah, all the same concept. And brother of Jared sees the finger of the Lord, E.T., phone home, touches the 16 stones, which is interesting why it's 16 stones, but there are 8 barges and 2 for each, I believe was the case. Yeah. Now the number of the vessels which had been prepared was 8. Ta-da! How did I know? Associative memory. And so he's able to see Emmanuel in the spirit form before he comes to earth. And those who have a perfect knowledge cannot be kept from within the veil. And if all you have is a spiritual witness, you don't have a perfect knowledge, because Alma chapter 32, starting in verse 28, explains all of this to Mormons, and Mormons for some reason disconnect. They think a spiritual witness is the perfect knowledge. It doesn't help that the Great and Abominable Church prophets are holding Mormons in bondage, causing their scriptures to be a stumbling block for them. Oh wait, that's what Nephi prophesied of. And so they had interpreters, are provided to bring the Jaredite record to light. Oh, that's the Urim Thummim, called interpreters here. Moroni is commanded to seal up the writings of the brother of Jared until the latter days, until Emmanuel shall bring it forth. But Mormons need to have faith, and apparently they don't. They've already given up and stopped watching the video. Christ commands men to believe his words. So yeah, this is Joseph Smith and the prophecy of the Jewish Messiah of the latter days. The people, which Mormons, need to hearken to their Christ. You need to believe his words. You don't get offended and run away and say, I'm not going to believe him. I believe Joseph, even though my ancestor murdered him. And so, yeah, believe the learning of the Jews' gospel so that you can be saved. Do not use Christian interpretation. And so there's the prophecy of 3 witnesses. Oh, it means the Book of Mormon is literal history. It's so true. As I've gone over with you in this video and in multiple videos, witnesses reveal patterns and thus help to confirm and establish what the truth of the event is. And when you're dealing with prophecy, yeah. So all the Book of Mormon is doing is being another witness in the learning of the Jews of prophecies of the latter days. It's following the exact same patterns. That's what that means. It's not that you pay somebody to lie in court and call them a legitimate witness so that your defendant can get away with their crimes or their lies and deceptions so that they can continue to con you out of your money called tithing. And so yeah, the Book of Mormon is the most correct of any book on the earth, because a man will draw nearer to God by abiding by its precepts, because of the same pattern with the Bible, with other stories that were rejected from being put in the Bible by the evil, great and abominable Christians, and the record of the Romans, their God tales, gospels, the Greeks, and the Persians, and the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, and the Hittites, and the Canaanites, and all the way back to the Egyptians, the origin of mankind, from which all humans sprang from, until they decided to migrate out and be scattered all over the world, to be gathered in the latter days to Zion in southern Illinois for the weekend of the 3rd day of darkness, April 2024. And 6. Jaredite barges still driven by the winds to the promised land. And so yeah, the flood story, a similar situation until they get to dry land in the Promised Land. Dry land rises up. That's the Promised Land from the Egyptian documents. It's where that all originates from. And then they begin their kingdoms as Oriha is appointed king over them. Jared and his brother pass away in death because Emmanuel is mortal with mortal parents. That's the learning of the Jews concerning the Christ or Messiah. Not a supernatural being. And so, and the brother of Jared goes to a mount, Utah, gets the Urim and Thummim to prophesy of the latter days in the barges passing through into the Promised Land. That's the symbolism there. And Oriha is righteous. And so it's similar to the first Pharaoh of Egypt, first king of Egypt, who was a righteous man. Similar to Alma, was a repentant righteous man, etc., etc. Follows the same pattern. Noah, righteous man. And so yeah, you're looking at Joseph Smith as the first one who's the righteous man, but then wicked people take over afterwards. And prophets rise up to condemn the wicked, the idolatry of the people, and they sometimes repent out of fear. Not very often do they repent out of their own humility, which Alma 32 also talks about before getting into the whole faith leading into a perfect knowledge of things. And 8, continual wars, secret combinations are now introduced that are going to be the ruin and destruction, utter destruction of the Mormons. Since the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was founded by the secret combination called Danites, led by Brigham Young, it was doomed for failure anyway. Secret combinations are of the devil, of the inverted pentagram of Lucifer, on the keystone of the doors of their temple, at the headquarters, destruction of nations. And so, verse 8, or chapter 8, Moroni is interrupting to, again, in case you hadn't caught on, this is speaking to us in our day, right now. Modern Mormons are warned against secret combinations, which shall seek to overthrow the government of the United States of America so that they can have their kingdom of Deseret back. Do remember, right? You're not new. If you're new, you've run away. He comes right out and tells us. He uses Lucifer and Jesus, but how else do you think it's going to happen? Although I did have a Hitler for Biden today. What's up with that? Psycho people. So yeah, the Council for Religious Freedom working with the church to get their kingdom back since 1981. Alrighty. And then 9. And so yeah, presidents of the church passed one to another by descent. The president of the Quorum of the 12, with intrigue and murder, penalty of death for revealing the sacred secrets of the covenant path in the temple endowment ceremony. That tells us that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is planning a coup of America. And many Mormons cry foul of the leaders of the church. And famine and poisonous serpents plague the people. The interesting thing is, in Doctrine and Covenants, there's if anybody is bit by a poisonous serpent, if they're a man of God, they will not be harmed. And so here, you see that used in a prophecy story form here, where they're not prospering, there's a famine, and you see the poisonous serpents tied to many prophets crying repentance because the leaders of the Great and Abominable Church are wicked. And so it goes also back to Moses. People are bitten by poisonous serpents, and he has the serpent staff. They just need to follow him, which is looking at it. And they're healed. By his stripes we are healed. To hell with the devil. Striper. You don't know that Christian rock band from the 80s? And more time goes by. When righteousness prevails, the people are blessed and prospered by the Lord. But unfortunately, as I've done the research with the signs in the heavens accompanying each and every single one of the presidents of Brigham Young's church, they all are wicked. And so there has been no prosperity of Mormonism. The prophets have held you in bondage like King Noah did. And so wars, dissensions, and wickedness dominate Mormon life. Their prophets predict utter destruction. Joseph Smith. Emmanuel of the latter days. There's the key word there, utter destruction. From Joseph Smith, second vision. This is the bicentennial year. Mormons will be utterly destroyed unless they repent. And the Mormons reject the words of the prophets. They are utterly destroyed. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. And so then either Emmanuel is one of them. He tells the Mormons to believe in God, the learning of the Jews, and they don't believe. And Moroni recounts the wonders and marvels done by faith. And it's not magic. Faith is in the Word. And so you get revelation while reading the Word, and then you make it happen. Just like in the stories, even though they're supernatural stuff, it's the same concept though, but in a more realistic form for us. And so you don't get revelation to build a boat or barges, and get revelation to have God touch stones and they light up the barges while you're suffocating with no air to breathe. But whatever job you have, you can get inspiration from reading the Book of Mormon as to how to improve your work conditions. And I've told you stories about how I've done it while working for the church. and even 4 of the footnotes. But they rejected a lot of them, and then Nelson gets up at the pulpit of conference and, oops, if only they had listened to me, he still would have made those blunders, because they're the Great and Abominable Church. And so the Lord doesn't give men weakness that they may be humble, in the sense of you shouldn't exercise. I don't even exercise. Anybody want to paint it? No, you still have to take the inspiration, do the work, and produce the results. And so the weakness is just, you're inexperienced. And so by following the inspiration, which inspiration comes from exposure to truth. Because if you are immersing yourself with lies and deceptions, you're not going to produce good results. You cannot produce good fruit from a bad seed, bad word. Not bad word as in a 4-letter word like family or friendship, but love. Those evil 4-letter words. And so you see that kind of example in its extreme. Nephi had no clue how to build a boat, but he prays, he gets the blueprints, builds the boat. His brothers don't believe, they don't want to build it until they see, hey, he's building it. Well, I want to take the credit away from him. And then they have a dance party, and God doesn't like dancing, and so Kevin Bacon comes and lets them know that dancing is approved in the Bible. And so here we have the brother of Jared moved Mount Zerin by faith. No, he got inspiration as to how to move it. He was able to get dynamite to blow some holes and get a construction crane to, I can't think of the name. I know they're bobcats, the little versions, but the bigger versions of the bobcats. I can't think of the name. Bulldozer. Isn't it bulldozer? Yeah, it's a bulldozer. They started working on it. We see it today with the copper the mining companies that dig up Utah. They're digging up the mountains. There are mountain peaks that are gone now because of them. And they've left it barren and desolate because they're not replenishing the soil and replanting tree growth or vegetation growth. They're just leaving it desolate. But anyway, and thus helped with the problems that we're having with climate change here in the valley. And so, it's also symbolic of moving Utahns to the promised land, top of the mountains. And so faith, hope, charity. Where's love? Charity is love. It's wrong translation. Keratos in Greek is charity. To give. Love is agape in Greek. Oh, there was also, oops. And so now, as the brother of Jared, sees the Christ, and his faith is no more. So too Moroni sees the Christ, and he calls him Jesus. And as I told you in the previous video today, it's referring to the Jewish authors of the Gospels in which they name Emmanuel Jesus. And so it's like Guardians of the Galaxy that I just watched. The hero has a name, but like the learning of the Jews, he is Emmanuel. And it's the stories of Emmanuel saving the galaxy with his 12 apostles. Or Superman, who gets his power from the sun, because he's a sun god, at noonday, Emmanuel. And so his exploits of saving Metropolis, Zion. And so Lois Lane also is a symbol of Zion. Superman was written by a couple of Jews, created by a couple of Jews in the first place. And so thus it's in the learning of the Jews specifically. And so all of the scriptures, all of the heroes are Emmanuel, but they're given different names. And so the Gospels, Matthew tells us right at the very beginning. We're quoting from Emmanuel or Isaiah, which is the reverse of Jesus, that the Messiah is supposed to be named Emmanuel. And so I'm calling him Jesus. That's your clue. It's not literal history. But for some reason, billions of people have been fooled into thinking it's supposed to be Jesus. And then you've got one group of Christians who think it's Jehovah. And so Ether, in verse 13, or chapter 13, for the Knights Templar of the Holy Grail, the bloodline, speaks of New Jerusalem to be built in America, not Jerusalem. Zion and New Jerusalem in America, in southern Illinois, where the crossroads of the sun god Emmanuel mark the spot for Zion and New Jerusalem on 8 April 2024. That is his name, Crossroads of the Sun God. By the seed of Joseph. So Lehi from Ephraim, Ishmael from Manasseh, or no, it's the other way around, isn't it? Lehi is Manasseh, Ishmael is Ephraim. Which, that I went over that, I think, didn't I? When I did the Book of Mormon video series. Which this will be a part of that too, but that playlist. And so, it's Mormons. The majority of Salt Lake City Mormons from pioneer ancestry are from the House of Ephraim through their patriarchal blessings of the Great Abominable Church. But nonetheless, that's the symbol. The prophecy is, and the prophecy has. So, it's amazing how Mormons draw near to the Book of Mormon with their lips, but they're clueless as to how it's actually prophecy. And so, yes, they're Christ, Ether, telling Mormons about New Jerusalem in southern Illinois is cast out. They want to murder him. And so he does videos on YouTube writing about the Mormon history, the real church history, and from time to time helping to throw in some Egyptianisms and some Paleo-Hebrewisms. Prophesies of what the Great and Abominable Church is up to, tries to warn you to save your life, foretelling of the destruction of the Mormons as wars are raging and building up for a civil war too in America. And of course he's in a cave, running out, going out by night, running, looking over the land because of his breathing problems. Also helps build his immune system to fight against the poisons that he's allergic to. And so the iniquity of Mormons brings a curse upon Utah with poisoning. And so then you have Coriantumr goes up against Gilead, then Lib, and then finally Shiz. Everybody knows that story, don't you? Coriantumr wins, chopping off Shiz's head. And he tries to gasp one final gasp of breath, lifting up his body and then collapsing in his gore. How is he able to breathe without a head? Oh, whoops. And then the final one. Millions of Mormons are slain in battle because the majority of the 3 million active members of the church are centered here in headquarters. And so, yeah, taking out the Mormons here in Salt Lake Valley. And it's unclear as to how the extent and the type of destruction that's coming on 9/11 this year. But we'll have to wait and see. But like I say, Nelson can prove Joseph Smith is a false prophet. He's got the power. Because he paid for the destruction already. And so he can stop it and say, nope, I don't want my Zion back. Let's prove Joseph Smith is a false prophet. We'll silence Travis once and forever, make him a fool, so that everybody can call him crazy, doesn't know what he's talking about. You can do it, Nelson. You can save the Mormons from the destruction that Joseph Smith prophesied of, and the Book of Mormon prophesied of. You can do it. The rain's back again. An hour earlier. Google weather sucks. I just can't get it accurate whatsoever. And Spirit of the Lord ceases to strive with the Mormons. They trust in their spiritual witness and are always wrong, and it causes a stumbling block. And many Mormons contend against other Mormons who had a spiritual witness contrary to their spiritual witness, so they're Korahor, not them. And so, yeah, the Mormon nation is utterly destroyed. And then Korahor is like Ether as Emmanuel. You're seriously going to have me go to Zion all by myself? How am I going to carry all the books? I can't get them PDF'd in time. I came here, I thought, okay, I now have a time frame of getting the books PDF'd, and it just didn't work. So I now got to figure out how to transport them. You know, so did Moroni. He had to have a cart to carry all the plates. Ta-da! Prophecy fulfilled. Do you believe in the Book of Mormon, Mormons? You're not listening. So there you go. There's the Book of Ether, a prophecy of revelation for the latter days to Mormons in the learning of the Jews of Joseph Smith. And,